So far you've learned to evaluate arguments by looking at the type of language that is being used to try to persuade you by using emotive language. And then this past week, you were looking at logical fallacies to try to misguide you into evaluating, assessing the truth of an argument. And, you know, in regards to emotive language, what I'm trying to say is that we're not talking about ordinary everyday language. We are talking about issues in critical thinking that you could find in scientific journals. All right. And so, for example, the article I gave you about emotive language and euthanasia and procurement of organs, hey, that appeared in a very well-respected newspaper, the Wall Street Journal. So what I'm trying to say, these are examples from reputable sources, and they contains misplaced critical thinking. So, and what I'm trying to say is that when you review the literature, you have to be aware of how people might be trying to argue their point. So we looked at using emotive language, and last week we looked at logical fallacies, and now we're actually going to look at the strength of arguments. And I guess and that's going to be a major thing to look out for, and essentially the strength, and we'll talk about mainly inductive arguments, and the strength of an inductive argument comes from the strength of its premises. Just like in that thing with example of a repair guy, what's the strength of those premises? What's the strength that claim is strong? So let me, so I'm going to first go a review of inductive and deductive arguments. And just as we said before, right, a deductive valid argument, if all of its premises are true, then its conclusion must be true. Okay, this assumes that the premises are true. If that is true, then the conclusion must be true. Okay, and whereas in the previous example with the repair guy, it could have been true. He could have touched it, and now, of course, it could have been false in the sense that was he the last person to touch it? So even in that example, you have to doubt the premise. Now, in deductive arguments, if the premises are actually true, then we have a sound argument. Here before, if the premises are assumed to be true, then the conclusion must be true. And an inductive argument has a conclusion that goes beyond what is contained in its premises, meaning that you have premises, but, well, just like with the repair guy, is there something else going on? Could you either, with inductive arguments, could you either show that the premise is false, or maybe you could add another premise to show that it's false? So with the repair guy, you could come in with another premise. The cleaning lady touched the computer and dropped it accidentally. Okay, that's another premise. And so again, in with critical thinking, with inductive arguments, you have to determine whether all the premises are true or not, or maybe there's an additional premise as well that could lead you to another conclusion. So with inductive arguments, we don't talk about validity as in deductive arguments. We talk about strength. How strong is it? The thing with inductive arguments, the premises could be true, but the conclusion could still be false. What do you think about that? You have strong premises, but the conclusion is still could be false. So it could be every tree I see outside is green. And then I say, well, all trees must be green. My premise is true. Everything I see is green. That's true. But that doesn't necessarily mean that my conclusion that all trees are green is true. It's actually false, because now you could bring in another premise. Maple trees are purple. You give a counterpoint to that. And now the conclusion is false. My conclusion is false. And you know, everything about inductive argument is about experience, and also the extent of one's knowledge. We'll go over that. So so let's say in a deductive argument, all Brazilians speak Portuguese. Noel is a Brazilian, and therefore, right, what's going to be the conclusion?
Noel speaks Portuguese.
Noel speaks Portuguese.
Right, therefore Noel speaks Portuguese. Okay, so this logical structure has one of a deductive argument. I've decided to make this argument deductive. How do I know? I make a claim, Noel speaks Portuguese. And how do I back that up? Well, I'll say, I know Noel is Brazilian, and I'm also going to claim that all Brazilians speak Portuguese. And if these two premises are true, this has to be true as well. Now, if I want to say, no, wait a second, I know Noel, he doesn't speak Portuguese. So what now has to happen with this deductive argument? If you want to, if you want to deny the conclusion, yes, Radar?
Yeah, the conclusion will be not all Brazilians speak Portuguese.
Right. So this could be false, or the other alternative is that Noel is not Brazilian, right? So if you want to refute this argument, you have to claim that one of the premises are false, because this logical structure takes the form of a deductive argument. So if this is true and this is true, this has to be true. And the only way to refute this is by trying to claim that one of the premises are false. So the speaker intends this argument to be deductively valid. It is not possible for the conclusion to be false in circumstances where the premises are both true, assuming that it's true. If they are true, then no if, ands, or but, you have for certain a true conclusion. And the relationship, it's the relationship between premises and conclusion that makes the argument valid. And again, if the conclusion is false, then one of the premises has to be false. Yeah, you could either accept the conclusion, but if you reject the conclusion, you're also rejecting or denying one of the premises. And now, this argument is valid, but just because the structure is valid, you still don't know whether the conclusion is true or false. But if you think it's false, then you have to deny one of the premises. So a valid argument excludes the possibility of a false conclusion, assuming the premises are true. And when we argue, there's this quest for certainty, and in arguing deductively, you are making a quest for certainty, meaning that you want to be absolutely true. And essentially, when you're presented with a deductive argument, essentially you say to yourself, try your best to imagine or describe a situation in which the premises are true and the conclusion is false. You can't do that here. You can't say if the conclusion is false if the premises are true. If you can describe a situation with this combination of truth values, true premises, then the argument is not valid, meaning if you could bring up a conclusion that could be false, even though the premises are true, then you don't have a valid argument. So, for example, if you think, again, if the conclusion is false, then one of the premises must be false. So now I look at this argument and I say, well, I don't know about Noel speaking Portuguese. Noel is Brazilian, all right? I know that for a fact, right? I look at the marriage records or whatever, if that's truthful. We will assume it is. So one could say, well, what kind of evidence supports the premise that all Brazilians speak Portuguese? So now, to refute this argument, you're looking at the certainty of the premise. Well, how do I know this? Well, one could say, well, all the Brazilians I know speak Portuguese. And that's why I'm claiming that all Brazilians speak Portuguese. All right, and I go down the line here. Now, however, in this case, the conclusion could be false, yet both premises are true. How could that be? Do you buy this? Do you accept this? This premise is true. This premise is true. But is it possible that this is false? Everyone's raising their hands, and I can't see who raised their hands first.
Dr. Jamila.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
Yes, so I can comment. I think yes. If we if we know that the both premises were true, and Noel still cannot speak, maybe yes, maybe he was Brazilian, born in Brazil, and all of them they speak, but he was born somewhere else, and he does not know how to speak Portuguese. He's he was raised up somewhere else, so it does not mean that he should be, or he we expect that he talks Portuguese. So.
Is it my turn?
Yes, well, I mean, that's a good point about where he was raised. Yes, right. Go ahead.
Do we know that, like, all Brazilian I know speak Portuguese? Do I know Noel? Like, if I know Noel, then he's part of the all Brazilians that I know, so he speaks Portuguese. But is there any evidence here in the premise that I know Noel? There is nothing that says that I know Noel, so this could be false.
Well, no, I see your point, but let's say you don't know Noel.
Yeah.
Okay, and someone is speaking to you, and they say, "Oh, Noel is Brazilian." Oh, wow, that's interesting. Well, all Brazilians I know speak Portuguese, therefore Noel speaks Portuguese. I don't know anything else. The issue is, and I think you implied this, is that well, all Brazilians I know speak Portuguese, but I don't know the fact that I can't say all Brazilians speak Portuguese. I could only say that this doesn't cover the whole universe. Okay, if that makes sense, and that's but it's still a true premise, because everyone I know speaks Portuguese. That's true, and this is true, but this is false, and hence it's not a it's it's not a valid deductive argument, because the conclusion is false, even though the premises are true. So we have two deductive arguments. Here, it's false because it could very well be that not all Brazilians speak Portuguese. That's how you could claim that this deductive argument is not true, because you claim that the premise is false. Here, essentially, the relationship between the premises and the conclusion, there's uncertainty in that, in the sense that this, again, both premises are true. Previously, this premise is not necessarily true. This premise is true. Both of them are true. However, you can't say this because it's not the relationship between the premises doesn't push forward a true conclusion, even though it's both premises are true. So essentially, what I'm trying to say is that it's this quest for certainty with deductive argument. We have to give up making arguments based on deduction. And in its abstract, that's why philosophers from 2,000 years ago, they only argued based on deductive reasoning because they want their conclusions to be true. And they would claim that their premises are true. And it is said that deductive reasoning is the highest form of reasoning because if you have true premises, then your conclusion has to be true. All right, but we see now that it all depends on the premises itself, whether they're true or not. And people then what I'm trying to say, did not question the premises. Just like the earth revolves around the sun revolves around the earth. No one questioned that premise, okay, for various reasons. It wasn't until the Enlightenment period that people started to say, how do we know that's true? How do we know those premises are true? So it was almost like the philosophers, Socrates, Aristotle and Plato, was trying to prove their point with deductive logic by saying, well, if A is true, B is true, then C has to be true. But in those days, nobody questioned the philosophers. No one questioned their premises. And until the Enlightenment period, when people started to say, hey, how do I know that's true? Okay. And this is how what we should be doing when we read the literature. We should start questioning the strength of the premises. And so with the inductive arguments, they do not pretend to rule out every contrary possibility, just like the repair person. Okay, it does not, what the owner claims does not rule out every possibility. Are you sure about that? Is there a hole in the argument? They admit to being defeasible, meaning that it could be wrong, in the sense that further information or additional premises can change a strong inductive argument into a weak one. Now, all of this might seem disappointing, but the realization that more information could make differences motivates further inquiry. And I say that because when we're trying to determine what kind of research project we want to do, we could say, is it I mean, somebody comes up with a conclusion that blah, blah, blah is blah, blah, blah. And then you could say, well, is it possible that something else is going on? And it seems reasonable that maybe, D is going on. And I'm going to study that. I'm going to do a research project looking at an alternative premise or an alternative explanation. So on the first hand, it might seem, oh my gosh, inductive arguments could very well not be strong, but don't be disappointed. The realization that more information could make a difference could motivate us to study it, get more evidence. And that's the research process. So I'm trying to motivate you into the beauty of research is to come up with some contrary information. Now, if you come up with information that that isn't relevant, even then don't be disappointed. That advances science as well. It just proves that what has been known is known, okay? So the issue is with inductive reasoning is how strong are you? You're not aiming for validity, all right? Because that, as I showed in the first few slides, that could be wrong in the sense that the premises could be wrong, all right? What you want to aim for, give up your quest for deductive reasoning, okay? Aim for strength. Inductive arguments is better if its premises provide stronger reasons for its conclusion. So now, what is strength? How do we measure strength? Well, think about the strength as probability. Think again about the repair guy. All right. I didn't realize that I would wind up leaning so heavily on question 15. Okay. But I think it brings up a lot of good things. Think about probability. The strength of an inductive argument depends on the conditional probability of its conclusion, giving its premises. Again, we're not aiming for certainty. The best that we could do is for the conditional probability to be high. Just like in science, when we have a p-value of less than 0.05, that's a conditional probability, right? We could be wrong 5 times. But with probability in science, we're saying that in order to accept that argument, that inductive argument, is that the statistics has to show that the likelihood of being wrong is less than 5%. That's a strong argument. But you could still be wrong. But again, we're not looking for absolute certainty. We're looking for strength. Okay. An inductive argument is stronger when the probability of its conclusion, giving its premises or giving its data is higher. So again, in science, we accept a probability of p-value less than 0.05. This is truth in science. But we are accepting the fact that we could be wrong 5% of the time. Okay, so here's an example, evaluating strength. So in a certain area of India, it rains 4 out of 5 days during the monsoon season and 1 out of 5 the other times. Okay. Now, what is the probability that it will rain on Gandhi's birthday? What could you say is the probability? What's the least that you could say? Jamila?
We need to know the date of the Gandhi birthday, whether it's within the monsoon season or not.
Okay, right, but that's true. But not knowing that, what is the probability that it will rain on Gandhi's birthday? What is the best
1 in 5?
say?
1 in
Okay,
5 to
right.
20%.
1 in 5. Okay, good. So that's the best that you can say. And as you said, well, it depends on the date of Gandhi's birthday. But if you don't know anything else, you can't say more than 20%. Now, if you discovered that the birthday is during the monsoon time, then now you have more information. Now you could say 80%. Okay. Again, if you have no idea when Gandhi's birthday, you could only say 20%. Okay, so evaluating the strength, you look at the conditional probability based on your premises. You have this premise. If you did have this premise that it occurs during the monsoon time, now you could say it's 80%. And is that a strong or weak argument? Oh, well, is that when I say is that a strong or weak argument, I'm really asking is that is it strong in the sense that it will most likely one could say your conclusion is that it will most likely rain on Gandhi's birthday. And whether that's strong or weak depends on this premise and the fact that the birthday is during the time of monsoon time. All right. And one could say that now it could be false, right? It doesn't have to rain on Gandhi's birthday because it's only 80%. But I mean, that's a high probability based on the knowledge that you know. Questions? I know several people raised their hands. Faiza?
Yes, thank you, sir. First, I just want to share an information and then I want to ask about the premises. So Gandhi's birthday is on the 2nd of October and it's not monsoon season. So I think the probability is 1 out of 5. That's just an information. But I want to ask about the premises. So we do have 2 premises here in the main argument, which is 4 out of 5 and 1 out of 5. So we have 2 reasonings, right? So one could be strong and one could be weak, or both of them would be strong.
Wait, when you say both of them, what's them?
4 out of 5, which is 80%, or 1 out of 5, which is Gandhi's birthday with raining, either 4 out of 5 or 1 out of 5. Because we don't know when it is. According to the argument, we don't have the date of Gandhi's birthday. So we have 2 probabilities, right?
Well, now, if you do know the birthday is during the monsoon time, then we have a probability of 80%.
80%. 4 out of 5.
Right. Now, you bring up a good point. I mean, is this even true?
Yeah.
Okay. And it all depends on the, this, on whether the premises are true or not. I mean, this could be false too. And so again, if you want to, two things. One, if you want to make the argument that it will most likely rain on Gandhi's birthday, okay, then you have to give me the premises. But if one of the premises is false, then obviously the conditional probability goes down to 0.2. Mahmoud?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the same thing. It's just the premise of that the probability 4 out of 5 and 1 out of 5 is also not black or white, so it's not same as the trees are green. How can we be sure that it's correct also? That's what I was thinking.
Right, yeah. But the here the strength of your conclusion that it will most likely rain on Gandhi's birthday depends on the strength of the premises. So if you want to, again, if you want to refute this claim of 80%, you have to look at the premises and see if you could discount the premise. And so, again, a major thing is to look at the strength of the premises. So here's a weak argument. Our parade will occur on Gandhi's birthday in the area, therefore it will rain on our parade. Now here, no information is given about when is Gandhi's birthday, so we could only assume 20%, and that conclusion that it will rain on our parade, this is not a strong argument, because we have no information about Gandhi's birthday. You need additional premises to make the argument strong, that it will rain on our parade.
But sir, can I just add something if possible?
Mhm.
Okay, so the first premise says our parade will occur on Gandhi's birthday in that area. So how do we know? Like, again, we need to know the time of that, and if the premise in the initial one was correct regarding it being raining in that area all the time. So I think even the first premise is weak, not the second.
No, our parade will occur on Gandhi's birthday. That's a fact.
That's a fact. Okay.
Right? Now, this is the conclusion. It will rain. But we need information on whether the Gandhi's birthday occur during the monsoon season. And in fact, you looked it up and found that Gandhi's birthday is not on the monsoon season. And hence, the best that we could do, we can't say that it will rain. We could only say the conditional probability is 20%. So we need this. We will not accept. We will say this argument is weak based on the information we know. Qatar?
Yes, so I think in this argument, the strength does depend on mathematics. So
It depends
20
on what?
on mathematics, so 20% is low, so it's weak. 80% is high, so it will be strong.
Well, it isn't so much that it depends on mathematics, it depends on your premises.
Yes, actually, and
I mean, the math is simple.
I mean it depends on the number we involved in our premise.
Well, yeah, if we're given information, the conclusion derives from simple math. You know, we have 4 out of 5 times, and we know that during the monsoon, during the monsoon, and 1 out of 5 the other times. So let's say you're just given. Okay, what's the likelihood that it's going to rain today? Okay. And well, is it the monsoon season? Yes. Okay, it will be 80%. Okay. Is it not the monsoon? No. Well, the likelihood is 20%. Now, if you want to know whether it will rain when we celebrate Gandhi's birthday, it seems reasonable to ask, well, when is Gandhi's birthday? And so let's say, well, Gandhi's birthday is today, it's going to rain. Well, how do you know that? Oh, I just know that. Or if the person says, well, it rains 4 out of 5 times during the monsoon and 1 out of 5 the other times, and it's not Gandhi's birthday, it's only 20%. So I can't say it will most likely rain today based on the premises that you have. But if you don't know about the monsoon season, you can't say there's an 80% chance that it's going to rain. You have to give more information about the premises. And again, these premises here is not necessary. I mean, it's only 4 out of 5 or 1 out of 5. Okay. Again, these premises could be true, and Gandhi's birthday could be in the monsoon, but the best that you could say is 80%. But that's pretty good. Okay, just based on when you read a scientific article, it's based on the data. And you know, what could make the data wrong? Well, you look at the limitation section, and it could be a bad sample size, bad recruitment. I mean, what's the likelihood of your data being accurate? And you know, if we have a sample size of 20 and your population is 1,000, I don't have much trust in the data. Well, let's add another new premise. Our parade will occur on Gandhi's birthday in the area. It's during the monsoon. Therefore, it will rain on our parade. So therefore, again, if you add the premise, Gandhi's birthday is during the monsoon, then we have 80%. And your statement that it will most likely rain on our parade is most likely. Safa.
Yeah, what if we add, therefore, it will be most likely it will rain on our parade. It will be stronger than the first one.
Well, what was the first one?
Without just saying, therefore, it will rain on our parade, it will be weak argument. But if we add, therefore, it will be most likely it will rain. Adding most likely, it will be stronger than this one, but still it will be weak, but stronger than this.
No,
Karen.
I don't think the difference in words makes the difference whether you say it will or most likely. Whether you say it will or most likely, you could refute that argument based on, well, what are your premises? Well, this premise here, our parade will occur on Gandhi's birthday. Well, that's not enough, whether it's will or most likely. Well, will most likely, well, you can't say neither of them if it's 20%. The best that you could do is 20%. However, if you say that Gandhi's birthday is in the monsoon, well, I do agree with you. This is an issue about language. I mean, it will most likely rain. If someone wants to say will, that's still a strong argument because the conditional probability is 80%. So I don't want to get boiled down into will and most likely. I mean, even in science, you can never say will. But the strength of this will depends on the conditional probability. Well, let's go on to, so essentially, how do I induce what kind of induction arguments could we make? So one type is statistical generalization, where we go from the, we go from, and this is what we do in science, we go from a small sample size and then we generalize, okay? And so here, a restaurant, and we talk about this all the time. Could we generalize, right? What is the generalizability of our results? Okay, and we like to say that it could be generalizable, but if our sample size is small and our recruitment efforts were not that strong, then we could doubt that generalization. So here, a restaurant owner takes a small sample size to know how many people in the neighborhood likes Turkish and Ethiopian food. He asks a random sample and discover 60% like Turkish, but only 30% Ethiopian. The owner concludes that these percentages apply to the whole neighborhood, okay? So again, this is a type of inductive argument where you argue about a small sample size to conclude about a larger group, okay? And this is one type of inductive argument, and the strength of that argument depends on the strength of your sample size. If it's a good sample size, then your conclusion is strong. If the sample size is not reflective of the whole population, right? We do this all the time in science. So this is how you could refute a conclusion of a paper And or bring up a limitation of the paper. Now here is the opposite. Statistical application applies a generalization about the whole population to an individual. Next, the owner needs to test the items for the menu. The owner tries out the items on friends and neighbors, but he decides he doesn't want to test Turkish food on people who do not like it, since they will not come to the restaurant anyway. So he wonders whether his neighbor likes Turkish food. He doesn't know anything about this person, but concludes that the neighbor has probably a 60% chance of liking Turkish food. So this is where you take a fact about a population. Let's use another example. You know, this population, 60% speaks Turkish. You meet a guy, and the best that you could say is that you have a probability that this person speaks Turkish, a 60% chance. Okay. Now, I guess you could say, oh, this person speaks Turkish. But let's take the two extremes. You know, 20% of the people in the population speaks Turkish. You meet somebody and you say to myself, oh, this guy probably speaks Turkish. Well, your conditional probability is wrong, because only 20% speaks Turkish. Now, if you go to another neighborhood and 90% of the people speak Turkish, then your conclusion that this person speaks Turkish has a higher conditional probability. So this is where you go from the general down to the small sample size. Let me say right now, in this example, from the small to the generalization, this is a major fault in reasoning when we go from the small to the general. We make a conclusion about, we'll say something general based on the small sample size. Okay. Inference to the best explanation, and this is where we have the example of the repair guy. Okay, the owner opens the restaurant, nobody shows up. What happened? Well, it can't be that the people do not like Turkish foods. It's 60% of my previous sample, they do. It cannot be that prices are too high or bad service, because the customers don't know my prices or quality yet. Can't be due to, see, I'm thinking about all the causes. It can't be due to bad advertising, because I have a fancy website, big banners. Now, here that someone has been spreading rumors that your restaurant is filled with cockroaches. Who? You suspect the owner across the street has a motive, as nobody else would have a motive. This conclusion is now supported by an inference to what you think is the best explanation. Okay. So you think of all the causes. Can't be due to they don't like the food, can't be due to bad service, bad advertising. This guy is spreading bad words about me. It must be him. Okay. This is an inference to what I think is the best explanation. But you could still be wrong. Just like with the repair guy, you could still be wrong. Have you thought of all the explanations? So now this is where you can now argue from analogy. Although discouraged, he He regains hope when he remembers that another Turkish restaurant had a rough first month, but became popular as soon as people tried it. That restaurant is similar to yours. And now you're going to say, okay, I'm sorry. I don't want to blame the other guy. He's probably not spreading rumors. Now I know there's another Turkish restaurant who is similar. Of course, you have to decide, what do you mean by similar, right? If the similarities are pertinent, now you could say, all right, it's just the first month. So here we were trying to argue to the best explanation to come up with a conclusion, but now, is this the best explanation? You always have to, query, is that the best explanation? Oh, now wait a second. I could analogize to another Turkish restaurant. So argument from causal reasoning. So here's another situation. His restaurant becomes popular. Many restaurants come in. What attracts the customers to your restaurant? Okay. Why are you so popular? Well, you find out that lower prices has no effect on turnout. He checks to see which dishes the customers offer more often, but nothing sticks out. Now he says, okay, let me drop items one by one, and what happens? And there's a large drop after eliminating this type of meal, kokoric, some kind of lamb intestines wrapped around kidney, hearts, and lungs. His experiment supports the conclusion that this dish is what causes people to come to his restaurant. However, is it still possible that something else is the cause? Okay, so you're eliminating this dish with the large drop. What I'm trying to say is that now you're trying to associate this large drop with eliminating this. You're doing a correlation, okay? But how strong is this correlation? Something else could be going on. It could have rained every day for the past week, okay? Or people went away on vacation, right? So is this causal reasoning legitimate, or is it still possible? You have to think, you have to question, is it still possible that something else is going on? Okay. Reasoning about probability. All goes well until the restaurant is robbed. The only witness reports that the robber drove off in the Fiat, but only a small percentage of cars are Fiats. Do you trust the witness? All right, so a low probability. So because the probability is only 2%, you can't definitively say that the robber drove off in a Fiat. It could be true, but the probability is small. It could have been dark that night. The witness has bad eyesight, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so you have to look at the probability about existing circumstances. So the measures of strength, statistical generalization. What is the strength of generalizing from the small sample size to the large? Statistical application. Is it reasonable to apply, what you know about the larger population to this particular person? how likelihood, inference to the best explanation, argument from analogy, causal reasoning, and then probability. So use all these tools to determine the strength of your argument. So having said that, let's go over a few examples. So what I would like to do, let me attach to the chat. All right, so I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but this this exercise also, it consists of groups of questions with different types of inductive reasoning, and it gives an explanation of each type. So it's somewhat instructive as well as being an exercise. So why don't Angelina put our friends in two groups, and why don't we work on it for 20 minutes? Do as many as you can, and what you don't finish, I mean, I could establish a forum for the remaining questions, depending on your time. So anyway, everybody, why don't you download the exercise and be prepared to meet your group members, whoever they may be. Try to get along, be respectful. All right, went. So we could, I mean, we could go over, well, not, we'll
5
we
minutes.
go over the examples, but the question is whether group one wants to have more time to think on their own before you see the answers. You know, because I really want you to think. We could go over a few and then we could stop, and then, you know, you guys could either continue as groups or do it by yourselves and just attach it to the forum, and then I could review the answers with you in the forum, whatever you want to do.
So we have 5 minutes. We can discuss one,
Well,
and
we
then
could-
we can work in groups.
yeah, you could
And-
continue to work in groups either now or, you know, probably finish up in 15 minutes and then attach it. I'll set up a forum, and then I could look at it in the forum and give you feedback. How's that? You want to do that? Okay, all right, so let's quickly, group two, why don't you start presenting and we'll start going over.
Who's group 2?
The one with red eye.
Everyone else
Oh.
except us.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, good. Weak analogy. Well, what kind of effects could be different? I mean, texting and drinking both seems reasonable, right? They
How about
divert your attention, right? They
Yeah.
decrease your responsibility. So
causal reasoning?
what could you bring up to say that they are different? I mean, they may not have exactly the same effect, but why? You got to explain why. What is the difference?
Well, it's, you know, both of them probably they are similar in the way they cause distraction, and probably they
Right.
can lead to accident, but they are not the same in a way. They impair the process of thinking. The effect of drinking is completely different. So that's a pure distraction, and that's, you know, the alcohol effect on the brain, the judgment, orientation, it's all. So there is similarity, but it's not exactly the same.
Okay, any other major differences?
Yeah, just to add to Dr. Jamila's point, yeah, both of them can cause accident, but I think drinking is far worse because it's impair. The reaction time will be much slower, and the judgment will be much worse. Thank you.
Okay, well, all right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, if I may add, the differences between them would be that one of them you can stop immediately. Like I can leave my phone whenever, right? But if someone's intoxicated, they'll need some time in order to become sober, maybe the next day. So one of them
yeah.
is you can stop immediately, the other you can't.
Right, yeah, no, good. I mean, that's a major difference. I mean, I agree, alcohol impairs your judgment, I mean, texting has maybe not a similar effect, but it distracts you. That's the major thing. But you're right, Abdullah. You could stop texting. Your response time could be better than with alcohol. Once you're drunk, right? You can't turn it on and off, or at least you have to wait a few more hours. So the issue is everything have similarities and differences, but what are the relevant differences to discount the analogy? Okay, so the second one, again, weak analogy, but why?
Because the cause and effect relationship, this because you know, allowing mass shooting, I mean, fewer mass shooting, if more people had gone, it may not have the same effect if we because this is entirely different. It's a social issue, and allowing cigarette, more cigarette will cure cancer is entirely different issue. You know, health related issue. This analogy is weaker from that standpoint, I think.
Yeah, right. I like the way you said it. The cause and effect is different because, as you said, with the guns, you're involving a lot of other factors about society, blah, 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 that could make the cause and effect either work or not work. Whereas with cigarette smoking, well, I mean, one could say that you know, a lot of people smoke and don't get lung cancer, but by and large, we know if you smoke more, the likelihood of getting lung cancer is more, you know, if you have the right genetic predisposition. So you're more likely to be right to say more smoking doesn't cause less cancer. Okay. All right, good. So why don't we just go over a few of the next ones? Earth is like Mars, since Earth can support life. So what did you say? Right, Earth. Right, similarities not mentioned.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. So I mean, it's
Feature support plan.
yeah. So
Yeah.
I mean, you could say, well, in what way is it like? Well, you could say they're both round. Okay.
Yeah.
Just like the famous analogy that
Yes.
Fraser brought up, you can't compare apples and oranges. It all depends on, you know, what's the feature. And here it's supporting life.
Yeah.
You know, apples and oranges. If the feature was, well, they could roll down the floor, okay, down the steps, and one could say, okay, that's true. Apples are like oranges. So you have to look at the feature. Okay, here, Saddam was just like Hitler. Of course, we had to take him out. So the feature similarities not
mentioned. Yeah.
right. Well, Saddam was just like Hitler, right? It just said just like Hitler. Okay. Well, you need more in order to say we have to take him out. I mean, one could say, okay, Saddam was no bargain, okay? But Hitler was, you know, taking over countries and killing people. I mean, Saddam was doing that as well, okay? But not to the same extent. Well, or someone could argue, hey, listen, he was like taking over countries, you know, he tried to take over Kuwait and he was killing his own population. But his own population, one could say his own population, okay? All right, so so depending on what the feature is. Okay, Norway is just like Sweden. Yeah, no similarities, low crimes. Right, you need more information about, you know, the social, political, economic. You need more similarities. You can't just say it's just like Sweden. All right, why don't we do? Oh yeah, why don't we do two? Oh, why don't we just do the first one with the coffee, and then I have to leave. Coffee. Okay, appropriate. Inappropriate. Okay, second one, inappropriate. Why is that inappropriate?
Yeah, because it depends only on a small sample. I mean, the generalization was based on one sample only.
One sample of writing one paper, right?
Right. Yeah.
I mean, God forbid if I should base your final grade on one sample, right? Of your work.
That's what.
Right.
That's what we have. Yes.
See, I'm not that bad. Okay, why don't we stop now? Why don't you finish up? I mean, you could do it now or tomorrow. I mean, or no, this is tomorrow, Tuesday. Or if you want, we could finish up over the weekend.
Could we, Angelina? Could you keep the group so we can continue and get it over and finish it?
Yeah, right. Just get it over with, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't procrastinate. Okay. I'll see you on the weekend. I'll put up a form where you could attach this. Okay, guys. Thank you so much. Okay.
Thank you. Have a nice weekend.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.